So Caleb Maupin has put out a post or a blog or an essay or whatever it is you want to call it, talking about American Odinism. Now, if you're confused about the term American Odinism, you should be, because it's something he literally just made up to justify his position. Essentially, what he does is he takes all the bad things about Western Protestantism and blames pagans for it. I mean, literally, read the post. That's what he does. He literally washes all the blood off the hands of Protestant Christianity and blames paganism for it. And this goes in with his whole Americana and Christianity thing by just ignoring all the crimes that are in the history of both the United States and the religion. Now, I'm specifically referring to the Western Protestant religion version of Christianity because that's the one that that's the one he supports, and that's the one that founded America, whether they really like to admit it or not. So, this American Odinism, it's like, yeah, pagans bad. They had an influence on Christianity, and that's what made it do all the bad things that it did. Except that this is a bit of a historical revision, considering that one, Christianity didn't get influenced by some of these pagan religions. They literally just stole it from them and then murdered them on top of it. So he's completely rewritten history as being Christianity somehow being victims of the people that Christians persecuted. Now, basically he blames all-out greed, all the bad greed that made America greedy and bad, which also America good at the same time, is all the fault of pagans. I mean, we can completely ignore the fact that prosperity gospel completely comes from Protestantism. But he rewrites that as being, it's just a work ethic. It has nothing to do with glorifying wealth or anything. When that's the basis for all of the evangelical movements in the United States that use Protestantism just as he does. He's literally blaming Protestants for what he's literally blaming Odinism of pagans for what Christianity did. We should remember that Protestantism is one of the basis for Zionism. You know, the Christian Zionists? They're Protestants. On top of that, the Catholics in America have a long history of being persecuted by Protestants. And again, he shows his total hypocrisy. He looks at certain groups which have appropriated paganism, particularly, Norse culture, etc., and says, look, see how bad they are. Now, at the same time, he also denies that Hitler was a Christian, despite the fact that Hitler received overwhelming support from Christians, and not even just the Catholic Church. But then turns around and says, Hitler just appropriated it. But then turns around and refuses to admit that Hitler appropriated Norse paganism as well. So he's a complete and utter hypocrite. He's a liar. He's a two-faced hypocrite. Now we can take this even further. In South Africa, it was the Protestants who were pro-apartheid and the Catholics who opposed it. Protestants and Protestantism were always for slavery and Jim Crow, while Catholics opposed it. What Maupin has done here is utterly disgusting. He has completely rewritten the history of Protestantism to take every terrible thing it's ever done and then try to blame it on pagans. This is perfectly in line with what it is that we know Protestantism to be. It's perfectly in line with white American culture. It is perfectly in line with Christianity's history of persecuting other people. And isn't it so interesting that Maupin's Americana and his adamant support that somehow religion has, or specifically Christianity, has anything to do with Marxism, one of the first things he does is try to use historical revisionism to wash the blood off of his hands. And one of the first things he does is then turn around and try to... This is essentially religious oppression. He's scapegoating pagans, which is something Christians have done for centuries, if not thousands of years. So when I raise, and many other people raise the objection of trying to mix religion with Marxism, that it would just end up using Marxism to persecute other religions. Well, here you go. He just did it. This here shows how completely and utterly dishonest Caleb is. And it shows that his ideology is prejudiced. It rewrites history to ignore the crimes that his religion is a part of. And it shows why Marxism and religion really shouldn't be touching each other. And in the end, his entire ideology is supporting the white Christian American Protestant ideology that has been responsible for, if not all, the crimes that America's carried out. And in that, you see what a fraud Caleb Maupin really is.